one of the benefits to the owner is that you're usually able to generate 2 times the cash flow with a co-living property compared to a long-term rental. I'm sure you've seen the market, right? Like it's harder and harder for a real estate investor to make money and cash flow on properties with interest rates being what they are, purchase prices being high. But if the classic example I always say is if you're able to get a 4-bedroom house, maybe that rental rate is $4,000 a month. We're just estimating numbers. And right now our average, I think we're seeing in LA is about $1,200 a month per room. And even just leaving it at 4 rooms, you're looking at like $4,800 a month in gross revenue. But now you're talking about having to pay for utilities, right?
Hi, I'm here today with Devon Aguirre. Devon is a Southern California market manager in PadSplit, a company innovating in a co-living and affordable housing. With a track record in pro-tech and market expansion, Devon advocates for rental models that balances higher cash flow, reduced vacancy, and community impact. He is a regular speaker at real estate investor events, helping landlords and developers understand co-living financing, financials, and operational trade-offs. I think you're going to really enjoy today's conversation. It's pretty new, something I've never heard of. It should be an engaging conversation. Devon, thanks for meeting with me today. And if you would like to say anything about yourself, please come on and say hello.
Awesome. Thanks, Pam, for having me. Yeah, so a little bit about my background. I've been in the real estate industry my entire career. Pam and I were talking a little bit off camera here beforehand. I was a title rep for a lot of years, so I've worked for some of the major title companies in Southern California, but I've done a lot of the different roles in the real estate world. I actually have my real estate broker's license as well, but I have never actually done a real estate transaction, which is an interesting story. But so everybody always thinks I have my salesperson license, but I actually have my broker's license. And I've been a loan officer and pretty much done almost every part of the transaction except for being like a notary or an escrow officer or something like that. But yeah, so that's a little bit of background around me. I grew up in Southern California my entire life. Never really left. Love it here, and just been in real estate the entire time in different roles. And now I'm helping PadSplit grow not only the Southern California market, but also nationally. I help hosts that can invest in any of our markets throughout the country. And that's what I've been doing now for the last year or so.
So I'm going to assume in just a minute you can tell me a little bit about PadSplit because I found it to be an interesting topic. But what transitioned you from real estate into PadSplit?
Yeah, so it was a pretty smooth transition. I actually find that I'm still in the real estate industry, right? I work with real estate investors every day and in agents, referral partners, general contractors, property managers, anybody that has to do with renting real estate. That's who I work with. Mm-hmm. And so the transition was, for the majority of my career, I've always worked for technology startups. My first title company that I started with was a technology startup. I've worked for several other startups throughout my career, and I've always liked that startup space, trying to change things, make things faster, easier, better. And with PadSplit, it was a unique opportunity because in a lot of my other roles at other companies, what I found is that the entire idea behind the premise or the product itself sometimes felt a little one-sided as to who benefits, right? Like only the company was benefiting. And with PadSplit, we are trying to make the world a better place. And I truly believe in the mission. And that's something that really attracted me to the company, is not only is there an opportunity to help investors make more money, but also help people find some more affordable housing options.
Sure.
And it truly feels like a win-win for everybody involved.
Can you tell me a little bit what the premises is on PadSplit?
Yeah, so really what we are is we're the nation's largest co-living marketplace. And so co-living, right? That sparks an immediate next question. What is co-living?
What is
And all
I had to
co-living
look it up.
Yeah, it's just renting a property out room by room. That's the idea. So from the tenant's perspective, it's having roommates, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the thing, is like I do a lot of in-person presentations as well, and one of the first things I say is, "Who's heard of co-living?" And I get a handful of people that raise their hand, and I say, you probably all have heard of co-living. You probably just don't know it as that professional term there. But most people have at some point rented someplace with friends and had roommates, right? That's the idea. And so what we do is we're the marketplace that connects the investor, operator, owner of the property with the tenant, and we connect those two. So we're the online platform and we have some other services, like we advertise the properties, we screen the members. So we call the tenants members and we call the owner operators the hosts. So we screen the members, we handle payment collection. We don't do physical property management, but we help simplify and facilitate the idea of a operator owner that wants to manage a co-living property.
So when I was looking it up, so this is a perfect place for a traveling nurse or maybe somebody that's going into a different city for a short-term project or some such thing as that. I've got some younger people that will come into a city and will be there for 6 to 8 weeks, but doesn't necessarily want to stay in an Airbnb. So this would be something that's specifically for them, right?
Yes and no. So we do get those people, right? And this is a conversation I have with a lot of hosts, right? And because it's hard to put yourself in the shoes of the people that rent these rooms, right? Because I'll be honest, when I first started with PadSplit, I did the same thing. I was like, who could this really be? Who's renting these rooms, right? Because I have a family, I have little kids. This product would not work for me on the rental side.
Sure.
But then what it is, the marketplace, the tenants that we serve on the marketplace are, I would say, they're not the most recognized people. There are people who are living around us every day that function in our society, right? They're single people. Maybe they don't make a whole bunch of money, so they don't want to have a studio or a one-bedroom apartment, but they want to save a couple $100 on their rent for whatever reason, whether they can't afford that amount or they want to save to buy a house, or maybe they just don't want to spend money on housing. There's plenty of people who are like, I'd want the minimal amount of housing because I don't necessarily want to maintain a big house by myself, and I like to travel or something like that, and so I just need a place for when I'm working, and then I can dip out for a couple weeks to go to Thailand or something. But so while we do get those short to midterm types of renters, traveling nurses, people on work contracts for a couple of months, what we find is that the majority are just people who live and work in the area and who are looking to save a couple $100 on their rent every month. And so you get people like bartenders, waiters, baristas, fast food workers, Uber drivers, just everybody that helps our society run, but maybe they can't afford to live in the area that they serve.
Oh, that's fabulous. What a great idea that is, right? And that helps you to have a place at hopefully a reduced rate. So that's great. So that kind of sets us up for who would rent it. But so whom would they be renting this from? The owner.
Yeah, so
who would own this?
Yeah, so we don't own any of the assets, right? Mm-hmm. So because we're just the online marketplace, we just connect the owner with the renter, right? So at the end of the day, the investor owner, they continue to own, take and hold title to their property. We just help manage the people's move-ins, their payment collection. We have a rating system where the members can rate each other. We have a maintenance tracking system to where if the members have a leaky faucet or something like that, they can submit a ticket for that. It shows up in the owner's portal. But at the end of the day, the member is renting from the owner. We have a membership agreement that they sign with us, the tenants do, that has their commitments in it and things like that. And because we're collecting the payments, we're facilitating that relationship between the owner and the member.
All right. So then the owner, the landlord, would be the person that takes care of everything. You guys are take care of the rents and everything like that. If there's any type of disputes, you guys would handle that as well?
So we do have a support team that can manage a lot of those disputes. But as far as like physical property issues, right, there's a plumbing problem or something like that's where that would be technically a host responsibility. And so the host would either manage it themselves. We have plenty of hosts that self-manage, but then they can also tap into a property manager. So we have property managers in the core markets that we serve that are familiar with our model and are happy to help out-of-state investors or people who maybe aren't the most confident in managing property, because it is not a passive investment. Real estate never is.
Yeah.
And so to work with a property manager a lot of times can make it as more of a passive investment. And so you can plug in property managers, employees, whatever you need to do into the portal, and then they can help manage those physical things. Right. But yeah, that would be in their bucket of responsibilities as far as those things.
This sounds wonderful to me. How the co-living addresses affordability changes in the market. So you touched on that a little bit. So it's a cheaper rent for a lot of people, especially for those who may not be making as much money. Because I can tell you, when I rent a home for people, it can cost anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 to $5,000 to get into a home to rent, and then you've got utilities that you have to turn on and such. So it could be $5,000-$6,000. What kind of fees are involved in a PadSplit rental or co-op living? What kind of fees are involved in that?
Yeah, so our standard setup is that the rooms do need to be furnished and utilities included, and that's paid for by the host, right?
That's
so
wonderful.
that. Yeah, so as far as when the tenant themselves moves in, they're moving into a furnished, utilities, pretty much all-inclusive rent. So the rent is including the furniture and the utilities. So they don't have to worry about setting up utilities or anything like that. And then the host obviously prices that into their rent. So the host gets to pick the rent that they want, and it is market-based. So generally, like if I'm talking to a new host, and we actually have a huge amount of data as far as what we recommend for pricing, because especially in a lot of our core markets, we have active units that have filled, and we can show you, hey, this is what the market is showing as far as what rates you could potentially get in this zip code. And we break it all down granularly down to the zip code, where we'll say, okay, maybe this zip code you can get $200 per week for a room with a shared type of bathroom, or $300 per week for a room with a private bathroom. The host then will take that data into consideration, factor in the quality of their own property. I usually recommend also looking at local comps to see if there's any rooms for rent. But even if we don't have data in that specific zip code, one thing that I recommend is when you're first starting out how to price it, you shoot for 70 to 80% of what like a one-bedroom apartment goes for, roughly. Obviously, finding something comparable, because I always tell people, if your house has never been touched since the 60s and you're trying to compare it to a one-bedroom apartment that was built last year, you're gonna have some rude awakenings there.
Yeah.
But that's the pricing you want to be at. And a lot of people hear that and they go, wouldn't like a 70 to 80% of a studio make more sense? And the reason why we use that general rule of thumb is because the utilities and the furniture. So if you're looking at a studio that's $1,500 a month and a PadSplit room is $1,300 a month, $1,200 a month, you're like, wow, that's so close to a studio. But the hidden costs of the studio are you have $200 to $300 extra a month in utilities, and then you got to buy furniture and all that stuff. So there is a little bit of a premium there that you're able to get compared to a unfurnished, non-utilities paid room. And a lot of people like that certainty. It's kind of like the same reason I'm sure you talk about when we're talking about like a person who's nervous to buy a house, right? Where one of the main benefits of buying a house is that you have a fixed payment. You don't have to worry about your rent going up next year. Now, property taxes are a whole other thing.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, but you're looking at, hey, this is your fixed cost for housing essentially for the foreseeable future. Yeah. And that's how a lot of renters like it, is that whether it's 200, so we actually collect the payments weekly. The stays aren't weekly, so we're not short term at all. We're more mid to long term, because we make them commit to 12 weeks on the platform when they first come on board. Yeah. But when we do the payment collection weekly, so if you're looking at $200 a week, that's a little bit over $800 a month, because there's only, I always have to reiterate this when I'm underwriting deals with people. There's only one month a year with 4 weeks in it. It's February. Yeah. So everybody always does, 4 times the weekly. That's the monthly. So the real number we use is 4.33. So you multiply 200 times 4.33, gets you around $860 a month, roughly.
Okay.
And so if somebody's looking at that versus a $1,200 studio, they're like, hey, that's not only am I saving money, but I'm looking at that just forever unless I get small increases or something, but it's not nearly as fluctuating as like the regular apartment rental, because I don't have to worry about during the summer months, my utilities are going to go up. During the winter months, my heating bill is going to go up, that type of stuff. It's having that price fixed menu.
It's
kind of
fixed.
works.
I know what I'm going to be paying throughout the whole year, or the whole time that I'm going to be staying there. I know what I'm going to be paying, and exactly. Which is a big deal when I'm on a fixed. And then I guess the other thing is I myself prefer knowing that I'm always going to have parking. I know where I'm going to park. I hate going into an apartment or a studio and not having parking. That's why I don't ever go downtown.
Yeah, and so that's where a lot of our properties on the platform are going to be single family homes that have been converted into rent by the room properties.
Yep.
And this is where, so we talked a lot about the benefits to the renter, to the tenant. One of the benefits to the owner is that you're usually able to generate 2 times the cash flow with a co-living property compared to a long-term rental. I'm sure you've seen the market, right? Like it's harder and harder for a real estate investor to make money and cash flow on properties with interest rates being what they are, purchase prices being high. But if the classic example I always say is if you're able to get a 4-bedroom house, maybe that rental rate is $4,000 a month. We're just estimating numbers. And right now our average, I think we're seeing in LA is about $1,200 a month per room. And even just leaving it at 4 rooms, you're looking at like $4,800 a month in gross revenue. But now you're talking about having to pay for utilities, right? And so you're like, oh, maybe that's not that much of an increase. But if you're able to convert like the living room and maybe a den or an office into an extra bedroom, that's when you really start seeing extra revenue, extra cash flow on the property. And that's not required to be on our platform, but it's something we highly recommend. It really does make the numbers a lot better. So now you add a 5th and a 6th room to that same property, and you're looking at, instead of 4,000 or instead of 4,800 renting it out room by room, maybe you're looking at 6,000, now 7,200 once you get to 6 rooms. Right. So that's the idea. So a lot of our investors have taken like 3, 4, 5-bedroom houses, turning them into 7, 8, 9, 10-bedroom houses. And then they can dramatically increase the cash flow on the property.
So people are doing that. So they're not necessarily having a communal living space or with a dining room and a living room or anything such as that. They're using the whole space.
Yeah. So one of our CEO has a saying that he likes to talk about where he says, nothing good happens on couches. So he always says, he always says that. And really where we recommend against having like larger common areas with furnishings, couches, TVs and stuff like that, it's mostly because there's 2 things. When you have a couch, it tends to invite guests. Right. And so our platform doesn't allow for overnight guests as a standard rule, but we do allow for hosts to allow for overnight guests if they want. So you have guests. You also have people that start to annex the common areas. They start leaving their stuff in the living room and they put their boxes in there. And so really what you're trying to do is eliminate that friction of either social problems that can happen in those common areas or that like annexation like I was talking about, right? So one of the classic examples, like you have one of the roommates is watching the football game all day Sunday on the TV, hogging up the TV, and everybody's a little miffed. They're like, this guy's cheering the game on loud. I can hear him everywhere. Stuff like that happens. But if you were to wall that living room up, for instance, turn that into an extra bedroom, not only do you eliminate that problem, but now you're making more money on the property.
Sure.
And what happens with a co-living property is people tend to treat the rooms like their own mini apartments, right? They go to work, they come home, they maybe grab some food, they eat, they go back to the room to watch TV or do whatever. They're not really, some houses people will interact. So if you're going to leave some common area, what we recommend is a dining area, like a communal dining area, because that tends to foster that community sense versus like a couch with a TV. I don't know about you, but when I rented a room with some buddies in college, like that was where the conflicts happened. I want to watch this movie. I want to do this. Can I watch? I have some friends coming over. Can I watch it? Put my movie on or whatever? And so if you don't have that friendship relationship, that can get weird real quick, right? So getting rid of that, adding the extra room really helps eliminate that while also making more money.
Okay, so taking out those communal living spaces, I agree with you completely that maybe I would keep maybe just a little kitchen, and that's because everybody needs one, I think. Someplace to eat.
Yeah, you do need a kitchen.
Yeah, you do.
I always you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
What people ask me, like, what are the requirements to adding a room? And do you need a kitchen? And I always have to say, yes, you do need a kitchen. These people have to eat somewhere. Don't forget. They have to be able to cook their food. They're living there. It's not a hotel room for a night. And so there's that safety requirements. So I always tell people what the safety requirements are, but a lot of times they'll say, isn't that just like safety code violation stuff? Isn't that standard? I'm like, you'd be surprised. But our minimum requirements to like adding a room is you need to have two methods of egress. So that can be a door, like a hallway door, and then a window that a person can crawl through, or it can be two doors. Both are acceptable. And then the room has to be a minimum of 80 square feet, stuff like that. Because really what we're going for is safe and clean and affordable.
Okay.
But if like we say those things out loud, because if we don't, somebody's going to bring us a basement with 7 rooms and 1 staircase coming out of it. And then they're going to be like, why can't I list this? You didn't say that. So that's why we make sure to say those other parts out loud.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It's all sounding really, really great. Is there any downsides to this for an investor?
I would say there at the end of the day, it does take a little bit more active management because now you're renting to several people instead of one. But I think the pros outweigh the cons, to be honest. You have a little bit more room for interpersonal conflict there. But what we find is that setting a tight rules and setting tight expectations as to like how things are handled in the property and kind of getting ahead of those things tends to mitigate a lot of those issues. But at the end of the day, the type of rental it is too, like you have to keep in mind that it is more on the affordable housing side.
Right.
It's not luxury housing. So while there's more money to be made, there is a little bit more challenges involved with co-living. So I don't like to sugarcoat anything. I like to be honest and transparent. There's just other challenges. It's just different, but we have a lot of playbooks and stuff. So I always tell people like, you don't have to use PadSplit to do a co-living property 100%. But what we do is we help people scale. So you can manage one co-living property by yourself. It probably wouldn't be a big deal. But you start having 3 or 4 of these, you're going to need some help. And I'm talking to a host right now in Southern California. She's been doing this for 10 years. She has 10 properties doing this with 10 rooms each. And I just can never get to 100% occupancy. I'm always chasing 2 or 3 rooms in every house. And if you can help me with that, it'll be great. And so she doesn't have the time to devote to marketing like we do. Like we spend about $1 million a month on marketing for these rooms. And so we are going to find those people that want to rent this room. But yeah, so as far as downsides, I'd say
that's not her job.
Exactly.
That's not what she does.
Okay.
And you guys have a marketing team, you have the knowledge, and that's not her forte. Her job is having the homes and being the manager of the homes, not everything else. Which is, I find, what most people don't understand. They're like, oh, I can take care of the home myself. Like on my rentals that I have with my owners, they're like, I can take care of it. And then they call me and I'm like, look, I'm not your property manager. Right. I can give you the numbers, but I'm not your property manager. So it's the same thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. And most of if I was to talk to an investor today and they'd say, I've never invested in real estate in my whole life, would I say to try to self-manage your own PadSplit today by yourself? I'd probably say no. I'd be like, I would recommend them have a property manager, at least to hold their hand through the first one, and then learn the challenges and not be stuck up against the wall. But it's definitely doable. We see plenty of hosts that have been doing this by themselves for a long time and they're used to it. But it does definitely help to have experience. And that's why we like to work with local property managers, because they bring that experience up front and they just help you right away. And it just makes the process a lot simpler I always say it helps the investor get that mailbox money that they've been chasing, right? Rather than having to work for it every day. They can pay a fee to a property manager and then they just get as much of a passive investment as real estate can provide.
So the tenants respond well and the owners seem to respond well. What is the price that you guys normally charge for this?
So we have 2 fees that we charge. So we charge a booking fee, which is we take the first 10 days of rent collected for any new member that we source. Okay. Think of that as like a lease up fee, right? But instead of 30 days, it's 10 days. Mm-hmm. And then we actually waive that for hosts that find their own tenants. So we give them tools like a shareable link, customized flyer, a QR code, that if they find their own tenants through like advertising on Facebook Marketplace or any other place that we don't advertise, we'll still do the screening and the payment collection and all those other things that we do. But because we didn't have to advertise, we waive that booking fee. And then the only other fee that we charge is an 8% platform fee that's ongoing, and that's 8% after the booking fee.
Okay.
But the nice part is we don't charge any. Yeah, so it's just based on rent collected. The nice part is if the rooms don't fill up and we have them on the platform for 30 days, there's no money owed to us, right? Nothing is cash owed to PadSplit. It's all based off the rent collected. And so our success is tied to the investor's success at that point. So I always tell people there's no listing fees or any fees to just try it out. There's no monthly subscription fee. It's once the rooms are filled and they start paying rents, that's when we charge a fee, but you're also making money at the same
Sure,
time.
if you don't get paid, we don't get paid.
Exactly.
And I think that's how much that my property managers get paid. It's always 8 to 10%, and it's normally 10%. But if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, then everybody's happy and getting paid. I believe you don't cut your own hair; you hire a professional. So it's
luckily my wife's luckily my wife's my hairstylist, so I have one in house.
There you go.
She used to be a hairstylist for a lot of years, so I get free haircuts. I always joke with people, I only married her for the free haircuts, but I still don't think the ring is paid off even after accounting for those free haircuts.
Yeah, see, there you go. This is fabulous. How many states are you in?
So technically we're in all 50 states, but we have two differentiations there between the types of markets that we serve. Mm-hmm. I believe as of this morning, I think we're in 27 markets or 26 markets as core markets. And so the main difference between a core market and our emerging markets everywhere else in the United States is, so in a core market, you have someone like me who's going to who's going to know local vendors, who's going to understand the market really well as help investors onboard their properties. But also we advertise way more heavily in our core markets. Mm-hmm. So we advertise through Google SEO, social media ads, all that type of stuff within the core markets. And everywhere else that's not a core market, we just do the platform sharing, where we'll post the properties out on Zillow and apartments.com and those types of things. And so really with that, the main difference is if somebody talks to me about wanting to invest in Tulsa, that's not a core market for us. And if this is their first time trying to invest in Tulsa at all and as a PadSplit, I would say probably not the smartest idea, unless you're willing to go there and build a support network for yourself. Because if you need a general contractor, you need a plumber, you need all those things, we don't have that vendor network there. Right. If you're in a market like Atlanta, where we started, we're going to have everything you need. And so anytime you need a vendor referral, we're going to have that for you. You don't have to use our vendors at all, but we do have those to make it smoother for investors. And then so that's going to be one of the main differences. The second main difference is going to be in a market like Tulsa, for instance. If you still wanted to do it and you're still like, I'm going to do this, maybe you live there, right? And you're like, I have properties here, I really want to do this. What that means is that the host ends up being a little bit more responsible for member acquisition, just because we aren't advertising as heavily. So that means that maybe if you have 10 rooms, maybe we only end up filling like 3 or 4. You have to fill the rest, right? It's by advertising at your local businesses, advertising online, that type of thing. But in core markets, most of our hosts don't advertise themselves, just because we are filling them with a constant supply of people that want to book their rooms.
Sure. So do you, because again, I in my opinion, this is relatively new, but then I don't know everything, and I'll gladly admit that. Do you guys plan on expanding even more? Because it sounds like this is an emerging venture, and it sounds fabulous because affordability is a big issue. I know, especially here in Austin, they talk about it all the time because our prices are outrageous. This sounds fabulous. Do you guys plan on expanding more?
Yeah, definitely. So we're scaling really fast right now, actually. I believe we started this year with 12,000 rooms on the platform, and we're going to end out the year close to 30,000. So we've more than doubled this year. I think our goal for the end of next year is 60,000 rooms. I know our North Star goal is 1 million rooms on the platform. And we're growing. I think this year we expanded into 5 or 6 markets at least. So I know Los Angeles, where I am at, we just launched that this year. We just launched Sacramento, Portland. Those are all core markets now. We have Las Vegas, Phoenix, Denver was launched this year. Austin, I think, was launched last year, so we are active in Austin. We have about 430 rooms in Austin. We're in San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, Kansas City, Nashville. We just launched Nashville. We're in like 10 markets in Florida, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, Charlotte, and then Atlanta is where we started. So we started about 7 years ago. I think it took us up until from 2018 till early 2025 to get to those 10,000 rooms. And then now we've shot up 2x or 3x from there to almost 30,000 within a year. So we're definitely, one of the biggest challenges I think we face is that kind of how this conversation has gone. A lot of people don't really understand it. So that's part of my role too, is doing education, teaching people about it. I like to say I'm a co-living evangelist, spreading the good word of PadSplit. That's my motto.
I have to admit, when I first heard of it, I was like, what? And then I read a little bit about it, and I was glad I spoke to you because you cleared it up quite a bit. I understand that you have a referral program as well and an upcoming educational webinar. So where would we be able to find that?
Yeah, the link to that information should be posted in the show notes, I believe. But feel free to reach out to me on Instagram, or you can text me. I don't mind putting my phone number out there. I'm used to it. It's 562-673-3673. I can send you the sign up link for our webinar. I do that once a month. I did just do it in December. I'm not sure when this show will be released. I think it probably takes a week or two. So my next one will be in January. And then I also, our referral program. So the way that works is for anybody that refers us a host that has at least 4 rooms in their property and stays on the platform for at least 90 days, we pay the referrer $1,000 referral bonus. So that, and you don't even have to have a house or a home on the platform. So we have like real estate agents that take advantage of that. We have lenders that take advantage of that. We have property managers. Anybody who's talking to people who own property can take advantage of that referral program.
I love it. Maybe I'll take advantage of that. And look at that, a guy that wants to be reached gave your phone number out. That's amazing. Call him, please.
Yeah, I'm used to it. I probably should stop doing that, but so it's funny because I answer most calls I get, and people like my generation and people are like, you answer the phone? I'm like, I have to. I've always had to. You always have to answer every call. You never know who it is. Like 90% of my calls are not in my contacts. Yeah, but I'm open to opportunities always.
How do you get business? You answer the phone.
Exactly. Like I said, I used to be a title rep. If you don't answer the phone, they call the next guy. So you have to answer that phone.
Anyways, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. So where can we find you, Devon?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me, like I said, via text or call. Mm-hmm. Actually, don't call me now because now everybody's going to call me. But text me, or you can also follow me on Instagram. Devon Needs an Insta. That's my Instagram. I'm on Facebook. My face is pretty recognizable. LinkedIn, I'm on there. I think all that should be included in the show notes. But really, that webinar, my link tree should be in the show notes. Click that. You can sign up for my webinar. Or you can also check out PadSplit.com just to learn a little bit more about us. I have several YouTube videos online. You probably can find me or one of my other coworkers for PadSplit talking about the program and what it is that we do. So feel free to reach out.
Okay, so if I can just recap real quick, PadSplit is a co-op living for the tenant, and then for the investor or homeowner, it's a great way to get their home rented out in a non-traditional renting and or Airbnb, maybe a longer term versus an Airbnb, correct?
Yeah, so PadSplit, we're a co-living marketplace, right? But really the idea is when you're renting a property out with co-living, there's several advantages. Not only do you make more money, but also you have now multiple streams of income within the same property. So like a 4-bedroom house, right? If it's vacant for 3 months, you're out 100% of that revenue. If you had done that same example we talked about earlier and you turned it into a 6-bedroom house, now if one person leaves, you're still receiving 5 streams of income for that property. So you're very rarely out 100% of the revenue. And so that can really work out as far as when you're renting out a property as a traditional long-term rental and you're making $150 a month in positive cash flow, and then you have 2 months of vacancy at $4,000 a month, for instance, that just wrecked 3 years worth of your cash flow. Versus with PadSplit, it reduces that vacancy loss in co-living in general. But yeah, that's the idea.
I like it. It's a very non-traditional way at the moment to keep you rented and to keep your cash flow going for a rental investment. Devon, thanks so much, and I look forward to maybe speaking with you again.
Awesome, Pam. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. There's always more happening beyond the listings. Stick around and catch the next episode for real talk and insights that help you move smarter and farther in real estate.